Tony Stark and Steve Rogers were never just teammates. They were opposites. Steve believed in ideals. Tony believed in outcomes. And in Captain America, Civil War, Tony said something that most people brushed off as anger. But by the end of Avengers, Endgame, Tony Stark was right about Steve Rogers. Tony's biggest fear was never aliens. It wasn't Thanos. It was losing everything because someone refused to make the hard call. That's why Tony believed in accountability. That's why he supported the Accords. That's why he didn't trust unchecked power. Even when that power wore a star-spangled shield. Steve, on the other hand, believed the individual always knew better than the system. And for a long time, Steve was right. But Endgame changes the argument completely. When Tony figures out time travel, he doesn't hesitate. He risks his family. He risks his future. He puts the universe first. And in the end, Tony gives up everything. Steve doesn't. Steve completes a mission and then walks away from the fight. Tony once accused Steve of being unable to live without a war. But what Endgame reveals is something deeper. Steve didn't just retire. He opted out. Tony feared that when the world needed sacrifice, Steve would choose principle over consequence. And that's exactly what happened. Steve knew the future. He knew the damage that was coming, and he chose not to interfere. Tony, meanwhile, spent his entire life trying to fix the damage before it happened. Ultron was a mistake, but it came from fear of loss. The snap broke Tony, but he still came back. Because Tony Stark couldn't live with inaction. Steve Rogers could. That's why their conflict was never really about laws. It was about responsibility. Tony believed that power demanded restraint and sacrifice. Steve believed that doing the right thing was enough. Endgame proves that Tony's worldview carried the heavier cost. Tony Stark died saving everyone. Steve Rogers lived by stepping aside. And that doesn't make Steve a villain, but it does mean Tony wasn't wrong. He saw the ending before anyone else did, and he was right to be afraid.